My name's Lisa Watson, and I'm coming to you today on behalf of Sykel Enterprises. They have a really good line of nurse fabrics that they got to talking, and they felt like this would be just a really great sort of a companionship if we wanted to do a mask video and feature some of those nurse fabrics, because that's really apropos for some of the people who are ending up using some of these. I'm sure Sykel will make the pattern available also on their website. I'll show you how to go ahead and cut. We're going to need to cut two, so along the top of this mask. Basically all I did, and I stepped away from elastic because I think that's harder and harder to come by, plus it's a little bit hard to kind of fool around with hides on the inside while you're sewing up the edges. I did ties, okay? So what this is most fabrics run between 42 and 44 inches wide, and that's pretty much sufficient. I put it up around my head and tied a nice tie. You know, even people with varying sizes, faces and heads, this should work just fine. So that's the width of a piece of fabric. I'll show you that in just a minute. And you need two. You need one for the top, basically, and then one for the bottom. Okay, so that's what we're going to cut right now. So what do we want? We want a 2-inch strip. So we find on our ruler, generally, watch your rulers, but generally the one furthermost right-hand edge is at 0, and then you can see your markings for 1 inch, 2 inches. So what do you want to do? You want to make sure that the edge of your fabric, I'll put this in the close-up, the edge of your fabric runs right along, okay? Just that marked line for 2 inches, okay? Once you've got it where you want it, I'm going to start a little, again, kind of back here at the back, and I'm at 2 inches. I want a 2-inch strip. So I go ahead and cut a 2-inch strip. I get to a point where I'm maxed out. If I were to continue cutting from here, the ruler's going to start to wobble around out there, and I'm going to end up with some weird thing at the end. So spider walk your fingers up, okay? If you aren't having a glove, then be very careful as you do that and finish your cut. And then when you lift it up, you'll see that you got yourself a 2-inch strip, which we'll use that in just a minute, okay? So let's go ahead. We said we need two of them, right? One for the top and one for the bottom. Now I'm no longer paying any attention to the markings on my mat, because again, the fabric's moving around, you know, maybe we're not on an even marking. What I am doing is making sure that the 2-inch mark is lining up with the edge of my fabric, okay? So I'm going to cut myself another 2-inch strip. There we go. And just kind of spider walk along. Alright, so now I've got my pattern. So here's the deal. The pattern itself comes, you know, on a sheet of paper. Probably what you'll want to do is take your paper scissors and cut out this pattern. You don't need the square. Disregard that. That's just to make sure everything printed in the correct sizes, alright? But go ahead and cut out your pattern. So let's take ours, and what do we need to do first? First of all, we want to take our 2, and you can see when you get, you're like, oh my goodness, how am I supposed to tell top from bottom? Well, hopefully you've got your prints running the right direction, right? So you can see this is going to be my front side, and this is going to be my inside of the mask, okay? So you've got your prints running the right direction. You can also kind of tell if you were to put them opposite ways, the bottom of it is a little less pointy than the top, okay? So you put the two together, and what you want to do is you want to put their pretty sides together, okay? And put their outsides, wrong sides on the outside. Now, let's go ahead and throw a couple pins in it, and that way we won't lose track of what we're trying to sew together. All we're doing for now, as our first step, is just running a seam along the sides, and then I'll show you something in a moment, okay? What you're wanting to pay attention to is, those of you who don't sew a lot or ever, is the distance from the needle out to the edge of the fabric, okay? Our first seam, we're going to sew that at 3/8 of an inch. What to do next is this. I'm going to scoot out the cutting mat. Never, ever, ever put an iron on your cutting mat. It will warp it big time. So here we want to take and just kind of press open the seam. You can use your fingernails a little bit as pressing devices. We're just going to press that real quickly, okay? Basically what I did was press my seam open, and you'll see why in just a minute. So then I'm going to take it, and it's kind of like a little pillowcase without its bottom closed, okay? Technically that would be a pillowcase. We all know how to turn inside out a pillowcase, so that's what we're going to do. Alright, and because we pressed that open, it's now pretty flat, and now we have the opportunity to just fold it on itself, make a nice edge, and then we're going to throw the iron at it just one more time. Okay, so you do that side, and then you're going to want to do this side as well. Get yourself a nice neat edge. Go back to the middle too. Let's crease lines from earlier, okay? All right. What you want to do is make sure that it's all neat and tidy, and your top edges and your bottom edges are matching up as closely as possible, okay? All right, now we need to resort back to our pattern. And remember, we want it running the right direction. And what we will do is now, here's the deal. This bit right here, the bottom, you'll see on your pattern there are 3 sets of markings. What we're going to do is we're going to take a line. We're going to mark these lines with pins real quickly to avoid having like pencil marks on it later or something. I'll show you how to do your pleats in a minute. So we're going to do 3 pleats. But basically this little part here, down here, is your seam allowance, and he's now inside. So what I do is I'll just fold that under so it's gone. Sort of now I'm matching up, real things. So go ahead and put that on there. Grab your pins and quickly put a pin, basically run a pin along each of these marked lines. And I'll show you how that will help you in a second. Okay, so now you can see I have put, let's get this up here on the deal. So I have put a pin basically in each one of the places where there's a line. So I'm going to turn it around and do the same thing. Now it's a little bit harder because now your pattern is kind of upside down and backwards, but you can kind of peek through. Depending on what kind of copy paper you printed it on, you can kind of still see where your lines are. So I'm just going to kind of follow those. And this does not have to be precise, you guys. This is just to kind of give you a guideline. Alright, now what do we do with those? Basically what we're going to do is we want to take this pin and move it to this pin, okay? And then that's going to be a pleat. We want to take this pin and that pin and move them together, and that's going to be a pleat. And we want to take this pin and bring it to this pin, and that's going to be a pleat. Alright, that's how we're getting those pleats that everybody can see all the masks. So basically take it and fold, do a fold, okay, in your mask where that first pin is, and make it, and then bring the fold over to where the next pin is. Or if you want, just hold it up, match your pins if that's easier for you. Okay, once you've got your pins matched up, then just fold it back. Okay, and then take one of your pins and use that to hold the pleat down. So you've got one guy down. So again, let's do the easier way. Let's go ahead and hold it up. We want to bring our pins together. Okay, see how we've got that? Our pins are lined up with each other. And then we will fold it back to make the pleat and use one of the pins to hold the pleat in place. Let's do it one more time. So we're going to take bring our pins together, fold the pleat basically up toward the top of the mask. Have our pleats all facing down. That's watch the direction that you do your pleats, okay? So when we press this in a second, we're going to end up with 3 nice pleats, reasonably evenly spaced, okay? I tried to keep them in the middle because here in a little bit we're going to be adding our strips across the top and bottom, and we don't want our pleats hanging out in the way. So I'm going to come over and very quickly do the same thing on the opposite side of the mask, and then we'll sew these pleats down. Now you can see how we've got all of those pinned, and essentially there are our 3 pleats. Okay, so what are we going to do next? We are going to run 2 lines of sewing on each of the edges. All right, we're going to run a line of sewing 1/2 inch from this edge, and then just a little bit from this edge. We're going to run 2 lines of sewing. Don't cheat and just do one, because we're going to want to hold and not have these, in the wash come loose later. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to, on 2 sides, we're going to go ahead and run a seam 1/2 inch away from the farthest edge of this, and this is called top stitching. Okay, it's going to basically hold those pleats. Use my stiletto. All right, y'all got it? So I sewed 1/2 inch away, and then I sewed just a little bit from the edge. Okay, and same deal. I sewed 1/2 inch away and a little bit from the edge, and basically what that does is that's controlling those pleats. All right, so what we're going to do next, we've got it all pressed. We're going to take our pattern, we're going to fit it back on here, and now we need to find the top and the bottom of the mask. So we've got the print running the correct direction. We need to get our pleats in the tops and the bottoms. So we'll go ahead and put in some pins very quickly where our lines are. Flip our pattern over. You can kind of see, pull it back a little so that you have room to put your pins in. got your bottom ones. Let's go ahead and put the top ones in. And you'll do these pleats the same way as you did the ones on the sides. So you'll just basically take your pin, match up your two pins, and in this instance we're going to put the body of the pleat underneath. It's going to be going that way, and then the edge of the pleat is going to be out towards, you can see it's a flap this way. Okay, so same deal, very quickly. Alright, so that's your bottom one. You can see that go this way. Alright, let's turn it around so you guys can see the top ones. Same deal. Match your pins. Fold the tuck. It's really almost as much of a tuck as a pleat. Match your pins. Fold the tuck so that it folds toward the outside. Okay, so you've got you can kind of see a nose and a chin, shape starting to happen there. All right. We just want to sew. All we're trying to do right now is just tack down these pleats, all right? Because we're going to wrap these the bias edges around in just a second. So only sew about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. If you sew any wider than that, when you go ahead and put your strips on the tops and bottoms, these stitching lines, you don't want them to show. So, all right. So this is where your 2-inch strips that you cut earlier come into play. Okay. It's kind of have a middle fold in the middle. So you lay them each how you want them, okay? If you like me, you kind of like your fabrics all run in the same direction. So you want to find and meet to where the middle of the strip, the fold middle, okay, meets up with the middle of the mask, essentially. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Lay your fabrics, find your middles, and then lay it how you want it to be. Put a couple of pins in it to hold it. This seam, we're going to go back to our 3/8 of an inch again, you guys, and I'll show you why in just a second. That way, when you go and fold the other edge of the binding up around it, it makes a nice fold and it covers this line of stitching that we're about ready to put into it. So now here's what you want to do. You want to sew, just again, now you do want to sew. Instead of here before, when we did hold the pleats down, we just sewed on either side of the pleats. For now, we're going to come out here, not way out here just yet. Start here and end up here and sew basically the strip to the mask for both the top and the bottom. So let's quickly do that. So what we're going to do with the rest of this is we'll go on ahead and wrap these strips up around the edges. And we'll start by taking and folding. So I'm folding these down to the middle to meet up with each other. And then I'm just going to take the strip and wrap it around that edge and go ahead and pin it into place. And I'll just basically I'm going to fold this down a little bit so you guys can see it. So same thing, just taking this upper edge, folding it back to the top of the mask edge, or the unfinished edge, and pinning it into place. What about this part out here? So this is a little bit where the white is showing. Let's turn it under, fold it here, fold it down towards the middle, and then we'll fold those in half. And we'll go ahead and put a pin in it. Alright, it's going to look just like that. Pin that. And then very quickly meet up our two edges of the strip in the middle. Not exactly on the edges. Remember to keep one part's kind of offset from the other so you can see what's going on with the underside of your strip. You're not letting it get away from where you're going to stitch it, and hold it all together. Won't take the time to pin this whole thing. That's too tedious. Y'all don't need to watch me do that. I'm going to pin enough to show you where we're going to stitch this, okay? Now you, yourself, especially the first few that you do, you'll go on ahead and pin from one end all the way out to the other end. Alright? And same thing with this bottom. You're going to bring it up around, just like we just did, pin all the way. Once you've got them both pinned all the way, take it back to your sewing machine. Go ahead and sew, just kind of, point it out, just kind of along the edge here. You want to sew close enough to the edge to where you're catching it, but not so close that you're going to run off over it. You'll end up with your top and your bottom neatly wrapped and held securely, and then your strips will come out, and there should be enough length there to wrap around a variety of faces and head shapes and sizes. So that's our mask. Hopefully that was enough good information to where you guys can kind of be able to produce one of these yourself. If not, there will be comments. I'll put these up on this video up on YouTube, obviously, and you can put something in the comments, or you can also email me, Lisa, okay, and you can email me. My email address is info@quiltandcraftlink.com.